Business is messy and unpredictable.
Sometimes lonely.
So lonely.
So lonely.
And inspiration can often come from really weird places.
We pick up where the bullet point blogs and the highlight reels leave off.
We start with the stories. Welcome back to So Here's My Story. I'm Jody.
I'm Elliot.
And it is June.
It is. That's a profound way to start the
profound.
show.
Yeah, that was. I was reaching for straws there. We are, I think, now given the ridiculous gymnastics we've done around this issue in the past 3 or 4 episodes, I think we are safely, solidly into our second season.
Our second season.
At this point.
Nice.
Yes, because last week's episode aired on June 19th, and last year we launched on June 20th.
So there you go.
All your worries about being picked up for second season?
Gone. So excited. And so I'd like to welcome back for our second season our sponsors, Tom Loveland at Mind Over Machines, Cat's Copy, the architecture firm of GWWO, and Marycraft Staffing and HR Solutions.
I hope you have a story, because I am oddly, bizarrely storyless today.
You're bereft of stories.
I'm kind of just more like wrung out of stories.
I do. I have a story. And actually, it's funny because I was kind of thinking of this series of conversations as a good focus for a podcast, but I didn't have a story around it until this past Saturday, just a couple days ago.
Okay, so let's hear it.
So here's my story. I took my sons rock climbing. We went indoor rock climbing to this place called Earth Treks in Timonium. It was great. And so they have somebody that goes along with you and puts you into the harness and does all that stuff. So my sons, who, as you know, ages 19 and 15, and they're, in shape like 18 and 19,
right.
Like 19 and
15-year-old
are. And they'd both been rock climbing before. And so they were scaling up the walls and and doing their thing, and they were having a really good time. And then this our guide Sarah turns to me when they had done it and said, "Well, are you going to do it?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll do it," with all that conviction. That's exactly how I said it.
Like a squeaky. Yeah.
Because I thought, and I believe I'm correct in this, that I would be upset at myself if we were on the way home and I hadn't done it, and I'd be kind of beating myself up.
Yep.
So I said, "Yeah." And she looked at me because she heard that, in my voice. And she says something to the effect, I'm trying to remember her exact words. She said, first she said, "Had you ever done it before?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, it's never too late." Now,
were you offended that she thought you were too old?
I have long since gotten past the sir. You know how you get to a certain age, whether it's 20 or 25 or 30, when somebody calls you sir or ma'am, and you're like, "Wait a minute, I'm not a sir or ma'am, I'm your age." But long since gotten past that, long since. But I didn't think I was up to the "it's not too late for you" conversation. I thought I had a good couple "it's not too late for you" years left in me. So anyway, it just kind of struck me funny, and I didn't say anything to her because I thought we would get into one of those awkward, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to insult, but I just thought it was funny. But anyway, but what it reminded me of was a number of conversations that I've had over the past 3 weeks with people in different stages of their professional lives where they use that same formulation. I don't know, it might be too late for me. And so I was talking to somebody who was really, 24, 25, just in her first job, and we were talking about different things she might be interested in, not even that far apart from what she was doing, but she'd have to expand a little bit. She said, "I don't know, I'd love to do that, but I'm wondering whether it's too late, whether I've already cast my lot in this direction."
At 24.
Done. And then I was talking to a friend of mine who has his own company, or had his own company. He was selling it and just closed on it. But he, for years, had been paralyzed because he was thinking about selling his company. He didn't know whether he wanted to because he thought it might be too late for him to do something else. And he's about 43, 44, something like that. And we had over time, and this was the last time because he did sell his company, we had that, I don't know, maybe I'm making a mistake. It's just too late for me. I'm already far along. And then I had lunch with an attorney who's
like the theme of the month, huh?
Yeah. Had lunch with an attorney who's 66, 67. And what he really found was that he likes writing. He always liked writing, but he's fascinated with blogs and all that stuff. And he said with total conviction, yeah, I'd love to do that, but it's too late. It's too late. There's no way that I can do that. It's just too late for me. And so I started thinking about this notion of paralysis by a determination that whatever rules apply to whatever you're doing, you've missed the deadline. It's cut off. You're done, and you can't change it because you're already in this lane.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that come up for me in that story. So I'm going to stick with the lane. This isn't really where I want to take it, but it's the first thing that comes up. I think there's such a danger to imagining that. I love that you said pick a lane, like swim lanes. Like you're in something or you're not in it. And I think in so many circumstances, there's this like false sense of security and imagining that there's a middle ground where you're sort of in it or sort of not out of it. So there's a point here. In that case, so let's pretend for a second, and then we'll come back to address the is it too late part. Let's pretend for a second that it is too late. Like that for some reason that doesn't happen anymore. Then if that's the case, if it is too late, then the project becomes making peace with that fact that you can't do that thing or that won't be part of it. Like you're choosing to be out of it. I think there's such an energy drain to delaying sort of a commitment to either in or out and just sort of circling in that center. I see this a lot with like an employee. Somebody's really, I'll do a team meeting around, I'll be discussing some employee that's just not working out. Things aren't great, but they don't really want to work on helping the employee get better, but they're not really willing to fire them. So they leave them in this weird middle zone of kind of like, well, we're just not going to talk to them much. We're just going to kind of ignore them. I mean, they don't literally say we're going to ignore them. We're not going to talk to them, but that's what happens. Yeah. And it's sort of like that middle ground doesn't exist. So sometimes when I talk to people who are in that, like, well, it's too late for me. One of the ways that for dual purpose that I try and explore that conversation is like, oh, okay, well then what's the process of getting over that look like, that you're done with it? Like, because sometimes it's just useful to kind of admit or notice or acknowledge or accept the fact that something's not going to happen and kind of make peace with it. Or more often than not, it will often sort of kick back in the get up and go. Like you've sort of fallen into a little bit of a victim thing. We're like, oh, it's too late. Well, I guess it is too late. What do you want to do? Well, okay, maybe it's not totally too late. I could still do like blah, blah, blah. So that's just a sidebar.
Well, but part of it is though, if it is too late, because I wasn't thinking about that. If it is too late, and to give you an example, I have a good friend of mine went to law school because law school is a haven for bright, ambitious people with no particular talent whatsoever. And so she decided
there are several paths like that.
Yes. She was going to go to law school because she didn't know what else to do. But what she really wanted was to be a geneticist. And she had taken some courses, but she realized in law school, she wasn't fascinated with law school, but she really wanted to be a geneticist. And I've talked to her for years and decades now about that, but it's mostly her regret. She's like, but if I go back, you have to get a PhD. So I'd have to go back to undergrad, get everything that I wanted to get, then a master's, and I'd have to get accepted, but I'm an older student. And so.
But how important for somebody in that moment to acknowledge the difference between it's too late versus I don't want to do that work to do that thing.
Right. But there's a transition because at some point, she just decided not to do that work. And at some point it did become too late. She would not be accepted. But I think that there are a couple things. Number one, I think sometimes if you don't acknowledge, it is too late and what now, you become imprisoned by that very faint hope. And so it doesn't allow you to bounce back to, all right, well, if this is too late.
Should we call this episode How to Give Up on Your Dreams?
Yes. How to give up on plan A, so because. Which
is not entirely my point, but it's kind of my point. I think it can be such a, it can just be such a drain emotionally and psychologically and whatever the word of that, right. Temporally, is that the right word? Or the right use of that word? To keep coming back to wishes that, just sort of picking the lane.
Right. But if plan A is all you see, either because that's what you really want to do and you're figuring out a way to get there, or because it's all you see, but now it's just colored with regret because you haven't done it, but you still can't see past it because all you're doing is beating yourself up for not going there, then you're not allowed to see what else you can possibly pursue.
Interesting. Okay. You brought up a point a minute ago with the law school thing that I think is a very real and fair part of why this can be such a bit of a, not a vortex, what's the sort of like a black hole, the gravitational pull of this thing is, whether it's law school or medical school or any path where you got on and you put a bunch of time and energy into something, that sunk costs of that you've invested so much into something is not a small thing. And, but again, I think that weighing that, I think at the bottom line, my bottom line reaction to your story is there are very few circumstances where it is truly too late for something. It may require a slightly different version of it, or maybe to distill down the essence, of what you really want, or it may be that it requires a bunch of things that you're not willing to actually go do now. But I think it can be really tough also when you've invested a bunch of time and energy in something that then you're not sure. Like, I went all the way through medical school. Now I'm going to start a restaurant. That's kind of silly. But lost my train of thought.
But here's one of the difficult things is if you're in that situation and you don't want to leave your company, and maybe it's just there are opportunities within your organization, within your company, but you think it's too late for you to jump into that track. One of the difficult things that you're faced with, one of the difficult decisions you're faced with is if I go to my supervisor, if I go to my boss and I say, I'm doing X, but what I really want to do is Y. If that person is not receptive to my doing Y, I've just branded myself as being dissatisfied with what my job is.
No, absolutely.
And I could lose it.
Yeah. Which makes me sad. I wish more, we could do a whole episode on that. I think we've touched on it a little bit. There's so much value in being a leader that is not threatened by when people have other interests or, different needs than they're getting right now, not taking it personally and giving them the space. Because sometimes I've actually seen some amazing examples where people have been able to bring something to a company. Sometimes it's not totally different, but that's a whole other episode. I find that it's too late thing really fascinating because I think of it very similar when somebody uses that language. I think of it very similarly as when they say, I don't have time. And because there's a tiny bit of truth in that. Oh, and it's fascinating. They both have to do with time. I hadn't even thought of that until it actually came out of my mouth. But it's not that those things aren't true. We all have a lot on our plates and, it's not like you have hours and days sitting around and whatnot. But the real fact of it is that there are choices that you could make that would make them different. Now, obviously, no matter how badly I now want to be an Olympic gymnast, that's not happening. At 45,
that's crazy talk.
Not happening. So I'm not talking about those kinds of things, but I think the bottom line for me is if there is something that is unignorably bubbling up in you as a want that feels like it has risk of being a deathbed regret or at least a solid, hearty regret, then it warrants more of a conversation than, oh, it's too late. Unless you're willing to just, bury it, put it out of its misery.
Well, but interesting. So when you said it's too late for you to be an Olympic gymnast, all right. But if your dream was to go to the Olympics. So for example, I decided a while back and as you well know, but some of our listeners may not, I don't have a speck of athletic ability. I have a glaring absence of both gross and fine motor skills. So I decided, though, I thought it would be cool if I could go to the Olympics, and not as a spectator, but go as a participant in the Olympics. But that requires some expertise in an athletic endeavor. So
yeah, you would think so.
I decided also that the only thing that I really at that time was a standout in was whack-a-mole. And so
Is there a whack-a-mole Olympics?
No, but I wrote into the International Olympic Committee and did a fair amount of research.
Are you making this? Are you going to tell me you suggested whack-a-mole as an Olympic sport?
Oh, I didn't just suggest it. I got all the paperwork.
No.
Yes, it's a lot of paperwork.
Are you making this up?
No, this is totally serious. It's
not totally serious. Well, it might be true.
But it's totally true.
It's not totally serious.
But so yes, I thought that I had a fighting chance to be on the United States Olympic team if I could make sure that a sport of my choosing was accepted as a sport. But there's a lot of paperwork involved, and you have to demonstrate a national following. You have to demonstrate a uniform scoring system. You have to demonstrate a certain following, and individual, local, as well as statewide, and also some international clubs and uniform equipment. And I couldn't be assured, of course, that, the Swedes wouldn't come in with their own mallets, and that would completely knock off the system. So yeah, it was a lot of work. But my point is,
I was going to say, are you going to have one of those? Or
my point is that I may have rightfully decided it's too late for me to be a member of the U.S. gymnastics team. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I couldn't have figured out a way to accomplish what I really wanted to, which was be part of the opening ceremonies and march in and have the experience.
So before I make the substantive point, I would normally just make after that at this moment in the podcast, I just want to quickly pause to say that I have so much cognitive dissonance over whether to either love this about you, that you did this thing, or just judge the hell out of you about it. So
anyway. I don't see them as mutually exclusive.
Fair enough. So, but it is there. Somewhere amongst the whack-a-mole story, there's an incredibly good point there, which is, let's stick with the Olympic thing for a second. If somebody said to me, "Oh, it's too late for me, I can't ever be an Olympic gymnast," like that sentence is probably true. But I would be really curious to have them get really clear on what part of that.
Right.
Was it well, I've always wanted to, the part that I always daydream about, like that's the thing to hone in on. When you think about being an Olympic gymnast, was it the training you fantasized about?
Is it representing your country?
Is it representing your country? Is it walking in that thing? Is it standing? Right. I mean, here's an interesting thing. If the part you always imagined was like standing on the what are they
medal
called?
Stand?
The medal, the 3-part thingy, whatever it is. I can't think what it's called. Getting the medal. Then like if somebody said that, well, I keep imagining this, blah, blah, blah. That says to me that that's just something with competition that is like has like that. There's other ways. Places. There are other ways where you could, I'm making air quotes, medal in something and have that kind. And no, it won't scratch exactly the same itch as being an Olympic medalist. But is it the fame of it? Is it being known for something? Where is it just simply being able to say, I'm an Olympic blah blah? Is it that it gives you credibility, or like if people are really honest, it usually comes down to some sort of like recognition, or is it because they really miss the way their body felt when they used to do gymnastics? Well, you could still do something like that, and find out how far you could go in that. So I think when there's the temptation to feel like it's too late for it, I think there is the reason I put it in that slightly, I call BS on it, like I do with I don't have enough time, is exactly one of your first points was it gets used by people who are 24.
Right.
And the fact that you can even contemplate feeling that way at 24 says to me it's a faux justification. It's a thing that sounds good and that sounds like it sort of wraps something up into a bow that gets you out of doing the hard work of thinking about how you really get what you want in something.
Well, there's a comfort in that kind of excuse. And so
comfort in that it makes it not your fault. You're like, oh, well,
right.
So do it.
So last week, Nikki, my wife had sent me this advertisement that said that in Baltimore, they were doing stoop storytelling. So if you don't know what that is, they were having an open mic night on a theme, and you could tell a story, and their theme was Into the Wild, and you could come up and it's a very popular event. They've got 80 to 100 people, and you can tell your story. And so I had said to her, oh, that's cool. I can tell a story on that. But when the day came, and it was Wednesday night, and so came up, and I'm talking to Nikki, and I didn't realize that it was Wednesday. I was like, yeah, if we want to go to this, you'd have to leave, because we live in Pennsylvania. You'd have to leave in about half an hour, come down, meet me in my office in Maryland.
You'd have to be in your car now.
And we'd have to go. And part of me, honestly, was really thinking, if she says she just can't do that, I'd be so relieved. Why? If she could take me off the hook, it would be so easy if she said, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, well, maybe next time I'll do that. And then I would say that, well, I would have loved to, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
I chose not to, but I couldn't.
Well, it goes back to the story a couple episodes ago. Like, I wanted to, I'm so sorry, I can't come. Your story about your dad. It's a different flavor. It's funny, I hadn't put that together until just now. It's too late for me is kind of another version of that. Like, here's a handy thing that I can hide behind that sounds like that gets me out of something. You said it gets you off the hook.
It does. It gets you off the hook. And if you remove the if you say it's not too late for me, then in my story this weekend, that meant I had to get on that rock climbing harness, and I had to actually climb up the wall, and I risked looking like an idiot and not being able to do this.
But you did. And I will say, rock climbing, I've been to that place, and I've been in those things, and just simply like having those straps on over your pants is just humiliating from the get-go. So like, it's not a good look for anyone. So, but here's the funny thing. To me, it all comes down, I honestly imagine one of those like the justice scales things where you are weighing regrets. And it's not that there's a right answer or a wrong answer, but I think, because you said, when you told the story, you said, if I'd left and I hadn't tried, I would have regretted it. And just now you said, like, I was like, if I get in there, I might look like an idiot. I might regret it. Like, so which one are you, as best as you can tell right now, which one would be the bigger regret?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. If I didn't go, so I wound up, I went to Stoop Stories. I put my name in the hat, got chosen, went up, and I loved it. I loved it. And
I'm shocked that you didn't like that there was any hesitation there.
No, there always is. And, one of my friends had told me that when he's waiting in the wings to actually speak, and some part of him says, why did I sign up to do this? Why did I pursue this? Why did I do this? I can't believe I have to do this. He said it really helped him to start changing his mindset from, I can't believe I have to do this, to I can't believe I get to do this. And so that's not the point of the initial story, but when I was actually waiting on the wings, when they called me up, it really helped me, because I was nervous, and then I was like, I can't believe I get to do this.
Actually, I think it's quite profoundly relevant. I mean, so take it back to your rock climbing story. Like, you can make up a bunch of things about how you might look stupid. There's all the reasons you might resist it when fundamentally you're interested in doing it. Yeah. And because like, I can't believe I get to rock climb today. Like, doesn't that really does change the perspective?
It shifts your mentality. You're like, yeah, this is really cool. Because otherwise you're just thinking about all of the things that could happen.
Although, to be fair, it wasn't you that was saying it was too late for you. That was her line. So that's probably not I was trying to relate it to the other stories. It doesn't quite, like your 24-year-old, I'm not sure how to apply the get to that. Does it work for that? Like, if somebody is feeling like something's too late for them, I don't know that it. I think
you're right. It wasn't because no, I think it is, because for the 24-year-old, I think what they were saying is, I'd love to do this, but it's too late for me. And so if they changed it to, I get to do this not I'd love to do this, but I get to do this if, and then it becomes a problem solving exercise, which, how do we work our way around it? Like, how do I get to march in the opening ceremony? Well, let's find something I'm good at. Right. Well, that's whack-a-mole.
Or can I be the guy? Or can I be the guy who carries the? I don't know. Like, is there someone else? Is there anyone but an athlete who's in that?
Right.
I don't
know. Can I be, one of the people that keeps everybody else in line, and they give me a free USA sweatshirt or something like that. So yeah, I get to do this is an incredible mindset shift.
So I agree, and I think there's another important component to when this feels like a thing. At least from every time I've heard it, it's something like this. It's because there's something in the human brain that wants to make everything binary as like yes or no, on or off, black or white. And when I hear somebody sort of often in these it's too late for me things, it's because they often imagine that they would have to burn down everything that they currently have, and that this new thing, this thing that they've always wanted, would be not just getting into a different swim lane, but it's like literally starting all anew. And I know that is how it feels, because I felt like that sometimes, or like the only way you can make this change is just to scuttle the whole ship. And it's never, so a lot of times that thing that, I think this is important. A lot of times that thing that people feel like it's too late for them for isn't always actually what they really want. It's symbolic of, or it has, I had a client who was having just a really hard time in his business. And he wasn't really thinking of shutting down the business and like going and starting this like, it was like either a surf shop or a hot dog store. I don't know what it was, but it was some kind of fantasy of, like,
oh, everybody has that fantasy.
Exactly.
Sure.
Or like, whatever. And so we just kind of played with it a little bit. I mean, the important thing is not to go, well, that's stupid, like, well, let's talk about what about that feels appealing, I mean, because, and you can guess the moral of this story as it goes along. He didn't really want to, leave his wife and children behind or move them to this beach town, wherever this magical place was, and open whatever kind of randomly chosen store it was.
Mine's a flip-flop shack and an umbrella store on the beach, by the way.
I also hear this store with like rock star, like, I want to like be in a band, and, like their inner rock star wants to come out. And almost always for a lot of people, and it's not that this is the answer for everyone, but a lot of times we have gotten down to some answer like, they need to find some friends that they can like play music with, or they need to find some sort of creative outlet. Like a lot of times that binary, like burn it down and do this daydream thing that, oh, it's too late for us. Then you're stuck in this swirl of like no resolution to the thing. Part of it is because that thing, that daydream thing isn't actually quite the right thing. It just has a component of something in it that you really want. And a lot of times you can get that component far more easily. And one other time that we talked about this whole burn it down thing, I think it was you anyway, and if not, you can take credit for it because I can't think who else it would have been.
Okay.
Yeah. So this was Elliot who said this, like burning it down mode versus sculpting mode.
Yes.
That it often doesn't take burning everything down. It's kind of chipping away or adding to and like sculpting into a shape that fits better, because I think it's not useful if you're having this, oh, but it's too late. It means both the way you have it right now and the other way aren't quite the right fit. You have to like sculpt some other new shape.
Right, which is the opposite of binary. So that's our story.
But the discussion doesn't have to end here.
No, it does not.
In fact, we don't want it to.
No, we don't.
That is why we actually have our private Facebook group,
which we started to make sure that we could get your comments, your rants, your thoughts,
your stories.
Your stories.
You can find links to that group as well as show notes and links to subscribe via email and how to find us just about anywhere you can possibly find podcasts at sohere'smystory.com.
And you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at SHMS Podcast.
And since we know it takes a village.
Yes, it does.
We'd like to thank our village, our super talented, incredibly patient team.
And occasionally snarky team.
Yeah, but in the best of ways.
In the best of ways.
Snarky.
Yes.
Good mockery.
So a huge shout out to the people who actually help us produce our show. First, our sound engineer, Tom Hansen.
Thanks to Christy Schmier for our brilliant show notes and all the other fantastic writing she does for us.
And to Taylor Mathauer for doing just a little bit of everything.
Including wrangling us. Which is no small feat.
No, it's not.
This is Jody Hume.
And I'm Elliot Wagenheim.
And you've been listening to So Here's My Story.